kangaroo in the background for you Americans. Hopefully you'll see him bounce through. I've had this just tremendous movement on love, and I wanted to share another aspect of it here and how that relates to our personal improvement. And I was realizing that you know, we are so ingrained in love being an action. If somebody does this or doesn't do that, and like I've said, just to recap, you know, it's so easy for me to do an action to you, say, that I think is loving and it's coming from a heart, but when you receive it, you're like, that scumbag, what's he doing that to me for? And, you know, put your hand up if you've ever done something loving for someone and they did not take it that way, but it was coming from a heart that was of love. And you start to realize that love is not about actions, it's about a state of being. And so I took that to rewind that a bit, and I started to think about my life. Now, until we have unconditional love for ourselves, we can't have unconditional love for others. Now, that doesn't mean I'm in love with myself. When you're in love with yourself, that makes everybody sick, right? I mean, but think about it. When you've got unconditional love as your state of being, so now when Scott does something that is upsetting to Scott, I did something and I'm like, said something to someone, I'm like, gee, I wish I had said that better. Now, I can beat myself up and try to be on this path of self-improvement, and it is important that we self-improve, but ultimately it doesn't change that Scott has an unconditional love for Scott, but he's not in love with himself. He has an unconditional love for himself. And I was thinking about that, and I thought, well, how can you have unconditional love for yourself when it's not based in actions? So I maybe do good, do bad, doesn't change how Scott views himself. Doesn't mean I do bad or I do good, but it means you will. That's just part of life, right? And I was thinking about that unconditional love, that when that became part of my life, where I realized that Scott has value to Scott. And so now in that unconditional love, if somebody does something to me that's upsetting, it actually doesn't, it might upset me, but it doesn't change how I view them. It doesn't change my state of being, because it doesn't affect who I am, because I know who I am and I know where that comes from. So I started to think, well, how do you get an unconditional love for yourself? And that's kind of where I'm going with this. It's divine. Only God. People can, no, only God. Because if you don't have God, you get an unconditional love for yourself that's I'm in love with myself, and now you think that all your actions are okay because you have this wonderful heart like nobody else, that, you know, not you, but us, we have this wonderful heart that we're doing things for others that maybe they don't necessarily want done. Well, that's their problem. No, that's not their problem. It's got to come from unconditional love, not my desire to try to change somebody, influence somebody, or make somebody more like me, because if that's the case, it's not unconditional love. My unconditional love looks and says, I love you just how you are. That woman, you know, says those things, upsets you, tells you whatever, but what do you have? That unconditional love. You're a work of art. I just love who you are. That's special. But that comes from God. And for me, when I hit the bottom and was discarded by so much of life, I hit this point where something held me. And I didn't know what it was. I'm like, God, my whole world's left me and told me I'm trash. And something's holding me. What is this unseen force? And it was God. Unconditional love. So when the world had told me you're no good, you're not living to our expectations, if you did this, we'll love you, if you do that, we'll love you, you're whatever. When at that moment it felt like it was the whole world. It wasn't the whole world. Some of you folks are in my world and you just give me unconditional love. But at that moment, you get that tunnel vision, don't you? Oh, what's going on? And poor me. And it is poor you sometimes. But as I hit that place, It was like a line that I knew if I went over it, it was terrifying. What's on the other side? Something held me. And it was very disturbing. I'm like, what is this? Why am I not destroyed in myself? Where am I getting the hope to wake up in the morning? And it was this unseen force which I then was able to identify. It was the love of my Creator. And nobody can take that from me. Because you see, so much of our religious past has been based in if you're good enough, God will love you. If you're good enough, try harder, strive more. And we bring that into our natural relationships. And it's toxic. It actually, well, we've learnt that that's love. But there's a layer of love well beyond that. So I had this divine encounter. A divine encapsulation, there's a big word. A divine wrapping of love that just held me. It was like I was in a free fall. You're coming to the ground, you can see the ground, and when you're about to hit it, something just holds you. And you're like, the horror of that, but then the peace of that. I met divine love. When that divine love held me, and I knew I was not good enough. I knew that I'd failed the world around me, not in any specific action. They just told me I was no good. And I believed it. I tried harder. I tried to show love, but they took all my love as not love. Because you're not doing what we say. And it became soul destroying. And some of you have been there. Some of you listen to this are there. So this love of God that I had no strength to influence just showed me, Scott, I love you. I'm putting the words on this, but the feeling I had was, Scott, I love you for no reason. You're not good enough. You never will be. You're not bad enough that I wouldn't. There is no bad enough. There is no good enough. I just love you. I delight in you. And I felt that delight. And from that point on, as my life started to become restored in my heart, my mind, my spirit, my relationships, I started to realize, wow, God, now I start to look at my life and what I used to feel condemned maybe because I wasn't good enough. Now I realize, you know what, I love Scott because I am loved. And when you are loved, it's a safe place to be loved. So I felt that divine love that said, Scott, you are love. I don't do love for you. I am love for you. You and I, our love is one. It saved my life. And then it became Scott, and I started to see my self-value. Not to anybody else, to me. That Scott, you have value because you are valued to the divine Creator. And as I just wrapped myself in that, it was there. I didn't have a choice. It's just like, wow, God, I can't grasp this. My brain can't get this because everybody's told me I'm not good enough. And I've done things that I felt like are not good enough. And I've tried so hard to show and be caring and be loving, and it's failed. And what arrived was a love for Scott that's uninfluenced by Scott's actions. So when I do something, let's say I do something that's not pleasing and I realize I said something bad to someone, I don't walk away from that now feeling condemned and bad in myself. I walk away and I go, you know what, Scott? Do better. It doesn't change how Scott loves Scott. But it's like, yeah, I will improve there. Next time I could see that that was not a wise thing to say or a wise thing to say it in that way. So I will adapt and change that. So yeah, there is self-improvement. But you can see that's layered on the foundation that I already have of unconditional love that was given by God to me. And then Scott gave it to himself. My spirit man gave it to my natural man. And then it's flowed on to relationships with others. And I'm afraid, I'm not afraid, it's brilliant. I have changed how I love. What happens to me does not change my love and my feeling for people. You know, you can grab a hold of I love this lady. It's there. It's there. There's nothing you'll do to change that. Maybe it's you with a man. I love this man. but he's doing these things and he's saying these things and he's not like what I want. Well, you don't even know what you want because you don't love yourself. Oh, I do. No, you're in love with yourself. Your actions are influencing how you see yourself. But when you are love, when love is your state of being, doesn't matter what anybody does to you, it'll never influence you. In fact, it's a beautiful thing, and I look forward to the opportunities to be the expression of that love. Doesn't mean I'm lining up to be abused, but it means I'm not intimidated because I am encapsulated in God's love. I have Scott love for himself, healthy, not in love, and that flows out to love for others. And that is a beautiful thing. And I look forward to the ones that are around my life that just ultimately realize that it doesn't matter what you said to Scott, it doesn't matter what you did to Scott, it doesn't change how Scott sees you. Because that Scott changed. I want to just leave you with that. Encourage you. Unconditional love is not based in actions. Somebody might be doing things to you that don't make you feel loved, but they're probably doing their absolute best to show they love you, and it's offending you. Put aside the actions. Find God's love. Sit back. Come out into nature. Climb up Mount Taylor. There's a letter waiting. Climb up Mount Taylor. Sit and look at the sunset and realize you are loved by your Creator. Out of that love, you're going to love yourself in a pure, clean way. And then you're going to love the ones that are supposed to be in your life. Love is.